This is Outlaws and Gangsters, stories about power, crime, and the psychology behind the people who thought they couldn't lose. It's a story about ego, power, and why being invisible is more valuable than being feared. Because whether it was a man on horseback robbing banks, or a man in a $2,000 suit controlling New York, they all fell the same way. Every successful outlaw believes the same lie, that they're smarter than the system hunting them. And every dead or imprisoned outlaw learned the truth, right before it was too late. As always, I'm going to show you the one rule that every outlaw, from the Wild West to the modern mob, eventually breaks.
I bet you didn't know that the lawless West and the mafia underworld have more in common than you think. Let me tell you about monsters. Not the kind that hide under your bed or lurk in sewers, though God knows I've written about those too. But the real ones. The kind that wear cowboy hats or silk suits and smile for newspaper photographs while blood dries under their fingernails. The story begins at a dusty 19th century train depot. Galloping hooves thunder in the background, fading into the sharp cracks of gunfire. This is the Wild West at its grittiest, where Jesse and Frank James etched their names into the American consciousness with bullets and unbridled audacity. Suddenly, train whistles transform into the screech of tires, and the sepia-toned frontier dissolves into the dark, neon-lit streets of 1920s Chicago. Here strides Al Capone, larger than life in his pinstripe suit, a cigar clenched between his teeth while the bodies of his enemies crumple to the floor. This is where legends meet and eras collide. A blood-soaked tale of two worlds, one ruled by revolvers, the other by Tommy guns. Step into a world shrouded in shadow and smoke, a dimly lit bar room where the air hangs heavy with the scent of stale beer. The only light flickers from a single bulb overhead, casting dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls. At a worn, round table in the corner in the center stands a whiskey bottle and a bottle of champagne, not legal, of course. Three figures sit locked in a silent standoff.
On one side, Jesse James lights a small cigar, a gleam of mischief in his eye, a specter of the untamed West. Sitting next to him, older brother Frank James, leaning back, squinting and arms folded, his silence sharper than a blade, deadly.
Across from him, Al Capone smirks, rolling a stogie between his fingers, the very name a whisper of violence and corruption. This is no friendly meeting of minds, it's a clash of titans, a collision of worlds.
Jesse smiles, pointing his cigar at Capone. You think you're tough, city boy Capone? Try outrunning a posse after hitting a train full of pissed-off Pinkerton agents. See how your city slicker tricks hold up against a hail of lead. Robbing trains, cowboys? That's child's play, country boys, compared to working the treacherous bullshit of Chicago politics. Try running a city where every shithead cop, every judge, every politician has their hand out, all while dodging federal agents and rival gangs. That's a different kind of Wild West shit show.
Their words hang in the air, heavy as the smoke that curls towards the ceiling. They are men of different eras, their reigns of terror separated by decades and defined by vastly different landscapes. Jesse and Frank, products of a nation still healing from the wounds of civil war, found their calling in the untamed territories, their names whispered in saloons and feared in government offices. Capone, a creature of the concrete jungle, rose to power amidst the chaos of Prohibition, his empire built on illegal booze, backroom deals, and the cold, hard currency of violence. But despite their differences in methods and motivations, one undeniable truth binds them. They are masters of their respective domains, their names synonymous with both fear and a strange, twisted sort of admiration. The year is 1866. The American Civil War has just ended. In Missouri, echoes of gunfire still linger. Amidst this, Jesse and Frank James come of age. Jesse, the younger, is restless and mischievous. Frank, the elder, is contemplative and steady. Their world, once peaceful, is shattered by war. Raised on Southern pride, they face a divided society. For young Jesse James, the war is a visceral reality. He witnesses brutality inflicted upon his family by Union soldiers. The image of his stepfather, beaten and left for dead, sears into Jesse's memory. He vows revenge, his innocence replaced by determination. Together, the James brothers find solace and strength in each other's company. By the end of the Civil War, over 620,000 men had perished on both sides. From farm boys to outlaws, the end of the Civil War does little to quell the unrest that grips Missouri. The James brothers, hardened by their wartime experiences, find themselves drawn to this world of shadows and danger. Under the tutelage of seasoned fighters, Jesse and Frank hone their skills, transforming from farm boys into skilled and ruthless outlaws. The exact number of people Jesse James killed is difficult to determine due to a lack of reliable records and the chaotic nature of his life as an outlaw. Estimates suggest he personally killed at least a dozen people, though some accounts attribute a higher number to him. During the Civil War, Jesse fought in violent raids. The Centralia Massacre in 1864, where bushwhackers, including Jesse, killed over 20 unarmed Union soldiers. Frank James was involved in numerous violent events during his life, but determining how many people he personally killed is challenging. Frank fought as a Confederate guerrilla during the Civil War raiding parties, which were known for their brutality. He participated in the Lawrence Massacre in 1863, where 150 people were killed. As members of the James Younger gang, Jesse's and Frank's violent crimes included shooting people during robberies, though these incidents were often exaggerated in folklore. They were undeniably ruthless and willing to kill when deemed it necessary, solidifying their reputation as two of the Old West's most notorious outlaws. Crimes committed against civilians during the Civil War included looting, arson, and murder. Innocent townspeople often found themselves caught in the crossfire of guerrilla warfare, with homes burned and families torn apart. The James brothers were no strangers to these brutal tactics, contributing to the widespread fear and devastation of the era. The making of monsters. Jesse's the younger one, all fire and quicksilver, with a smile that could charm birds from trees and bullets from guns. Frank's different, quieter, colder, the kind of man who reads Shakespeare while cleaning his revolvers, finding poetry in both blood and blank verse. Two young men stand in the gathering darkness, Jesse and Frank James. They're about to rob their first bank together, though they don't know it's just the first step down a road paved with brass shell casings and broken bodies. The James brothers' notoriety grows with each robbery. Jesse and Frank James, along with their gang, were involved in a series of robberies over a period of about 15 years, from the late 1860s to the early 1880s. While exact numbers are difficult to pin down due to inconsistent records, historians estimate that the James Younger gang stole between $200,000 and $300,000 during their criminal career. Adjusted for inflation, this would amount to approximately $9 million today. Breakdown of their heists. Banks. The gang targeted banks, often using violent tactics to intimidate townspeople and make daring escapes. One of their most famous bank robberies was the 1869 robbery of the Daviess County Savings Association in Gallatin, Missouri. Trains. Train robberies were a hallmark of the gang's operations. For example, in 1873, they derailed a train near Adair, Iowa, stealing $3,000, over $75,000 today. Stagecoaches and stores. Although less lucrative than train and bank robberies, these heists still contributed to their total loot. Despite their notoriety and the substantial sums they stole, the gang's violent tactics and frequent need to remain on the run meant they didn't enjoy long-term wealth or security. Their exploits captivate the public and strike fear, but their path is not without consequences. Bloodshed follows in their wake. Jesse becomes volatile, killing without hesitation. Frank, though calmer, can't escape the violence. Bound by blood, they become the monsters they fought. Their names etched in history as symbols of rebellion. You want to know the scary part? These boys weren't born bad. They were raised on Bible verses and mama's cooking, just like any other Missouri farm boys. But war has a way of changing men, of turning Sunday school students into killers. The James boys rode with William Quantrill's raiders during the Civil War, learning the art of murder under the Confederate flag. By the time the war ended, killing had become as natural as breathing. I've seen it myself, my friends, how violence can become a habit, like biting your nails or drinking your coffee black. The first time's hard, after that it gets easier, maybe too easy. The Liberty Bank Job, February 13, 1866, a day etched in infamy. The Clay County Savings Association in Liberty, Missouri. The James Younger gang, faces hidden behind makeshift masks, descended upon the bank with military precision.
Frank, you take the left. I'll cover the right. Move fast, we don't have much time.
They rode out of Liberty with over $60,000, leaving behind a town shaken to its core and a legend in its infancy. The newspapers seized upon the Liberty robbery with ravenous glee. The James Younger gang had tapped into a deep-seated fascination with rebellion. Gunsmoke and gallantry, the legend takes shape, the robberies that cemented their notoriety. Gallatin, Missouri, 1869. Jesse, mistaking a cashier for a Union soldier, gunned the man down in cold blood. The act solidified his image as a ruthless killer. The first train robbery west of the Mississippi. The James Younger gang defied society's conventions. They robbed the Kansas City Fairgrounds in broad daylight. Jesse, ever the showman, bowed to the stunned crowd. With each exploit, their legend grew. They became symbols of the Wild West, their names whispered in saloons. The duality of their existence, the constant shifting between outlaw and family man, husband and killer, added another layer of intrigue to their story. Were they monsters as the law proclaimed them to be, or were they victims of circumstance, driven to desperate measures by a world that had shown them little but hardship and injustice? The Director and the Devil, the brothers in arms. They were a study in contrasts, these brothers bound by blood and a shared thirst for something more than the hardscrabble life fate had seemingly dealt them. Together they formed a formidable duo, a force of nature that terrorized the American West for over a decade. They were a contradiction in terms, these men who robbed banks and trains while espousing a warped sense of justice, who killed without hesitation yet clung to the love of their families as a shield against the encroaching darkness. But even the most captivating performances must eventually come to an end. Every devil gets his due. For Jesse James, it came from a hired gun named Robert Ford, 30 pieces of silver and a bullet in the back while straightening a picture. In God we trust, the last thing Jesse ever saw. Ford spent the rest of his short life looking over his shoulder until someone sent him to join Jesse. The wheel keeps turning. The wheel keeps turning. Another curious footnote, Jesse's grave wasn't his first. His family initially buried him on their farm to protect his body from desecration. Later, he was reburied in a more public cemetery, where his gravestone reads, "In loving memory of my beloved son, murdered by a traitor and a coward whose name is not worthy to appear here." When Jesse took that bullet in the back, shot while straightening a picture frame, "In God we trust," stitched right into the irony, Frank knew the curtain was falling. The horses are gone, replaced by Packard automobiles. 6 shooters give way to Tommy guns, and in Chicago, a new kind of monster is about to take center stage. The untamed frontier, with its sprawling plains and dusty trails echoing with the hoofbeats of fleeing outlaws, was fading into memory. The age of the cowboy, the gunslinger, the romanticized outlaw riding off into the sunset was giving way to a new era. One of bustling cities, roaring industries, and a different breed of criminal mastermind. Al Capone, they called him Scarface, though never to his face. By 1920, he's turning Chicago's streets into rivers of blood and bootleg whiskey. Different breed of devil than the James boys, but the same hungry eyes. Capone understood something the James brothers never did. Why rob banks when you can own the bankers? Why steal gold when you can print your own in the form of bootleg empire? Chicago, a city pulsating with the energy of a nation on the rise, became the new frontier, its streets a labyrinth of opportunity and danger.
And in the heart of this urban jungle, a young man with a sharp mind, a chillingly calm demeanor, and a ruthless ambition that would make even the most hardened outlaw pale in comparison, was about to seize his moment. His name was Al Capone, and he was about to become synonymous with the dark side of the American dream, a legend forged in blood, booze, and the relentless pursuit of power.
Alphonse Gabriel Capone wasn't born with a Tommy gun in his hand. He entered the world like any other child. His early years spent in the crowded tenements of Brooklyn, his family part of the wave of Italian immigrants seeking a better life on America's shores. The streets of turn-of-the-century New York City became his proving ground, a harsh and unforgiving classroom where he learned the art of survival, the importance of loyalty, and the seductive power of violence.
But Capone was more than just a street thug. He possessed a sharp mind, a keen understanding of human nature, and an innate ability to manipulate others to achieve his goals. He saw opportunity where others saw only chaos, recognizing that the real money wasn't in petty theft or protection rackets, but in controlling the vices that fueled the city's insatiable appetite for pleasure and escape. And when Prohibition, that grand social experiment gone awry, descended upon the nation, Al Capone saw his chance, his moment to rise from the shadows and claim his place at the head of a criminal empire.
The year 1920 ushered in a new era in American history: Prohibition, the noble yet misguided attempt to legislate morality by banning the sale and consumption of alcohol. But where the government saw an opportunity to cleanse society of its vices, criminals like Al Capone saw a gold mine, a chance to capitalize on the insatiable demand for forbidden fruit. The government basically put up a sign on the first day of Prohibition: "Criminals wanted, inquire within." And Al Capone said, "Thank you very much, you idiots." During Prohibition, 1920-1933, Chicago was a hub for illegal alcohol, with as many as 10,000 speakeasies. They ranged from small hidden bars to lavish clubs. By comparison, before Prohibition, Chicago had roughly 1,300 legal saloons. Organized crime, led by figures like Al Capone, supplied bootlegged liquor, ensuring a steady flow of business. Capone, under the tutelage of his mentor, the ruthless Johnny Torrio, had already established himself as a rising star in the Chicago outfit, the city's preeminent organized crime syndicate. With Prohibition in full swing, his skills became invaluable, his rise to power meteoric. Al Capone's criminal empire during Prohibition made an estimated $100 million annually, equivalent to about $1.5 billion today. His income came from a variety of illegal enterprises which he ran with ruthless efficiency. Bootlegging, the majority of Capone's wealth. This racket alone generated $60 million per year. Gambling, Capone operated numerous gambling dens that brought in an estimated $20 million annually. Prostitution, Capone profited heavily from brothels. This racket added $10 million per year. Extortion, Capone's gang extorted protection money from local businesses, contributing $10 million per year. Other activities, Capone also dabbled in smuggling, loan sharking, and other criminal enterprises, was an additional $10 million annually. Capone owned over 1,000 speakeasies, 20 breweries, and 100 whorehouses, making him a dominant force in the underworld.
But with this newfound wealth came a surge in violence. Rival gangs, vying for control of the lucrative bootlegging operations, turned Chicago's streets into battlegrounds, the staccato bursts of Tommy guns a grim soundtrack to the roaring 20s. Al Capone is not believed to have personally killed many people, but there's one death tied directly to Capone's hands: Joe Howard, a small-time thug who insulted Capone in a bar. Capone tracked him down and shot him dead in broad daylight. A message sent in red ink, warning others to stay in line. Al was responsible for the deaths of over 300 as a crime boss in Chicago. He delegated violent tasks to his enforcers, such as Machine Gun Jack McGurn and Frank Nitti.
Capone's ambition extended far beyond the back alleys and smoky speakeasies of Chicago's underworld.
I cultivated relationships with politicians, judges, and law enforcement officials. My pockets were deep enough to buy their loyalty, or, failing that, to ensure their silence.
He cultivated a public persona of a benevolent benefactor, a man of the people, donating to charities, handing out turkeys on Thanksgiving, even opening a soup kitchen during the depths of the Great Depression. 6.
By the mid-1920s, I was at the pinnacle of my power. I was the undisputed ruler of Chicago's vice trade, my name synonymous with both fear and a grudging admiration for my business acumen and my ability to manipulate the system to my advantage.
Beneath the veneer of glamour, the champagne bubbles, and the infectious rhythms of jazz, a chilling truth resonated. Capone's empire was built on a foundation of violence.
I understood that fear was the most potent weapon in my arsenal. Keep your enemies guessing, make them see shadows in every corner, hear the click of a Tommy gun bolt in every passing car.
There was a chilling efficiency to his brutality. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre, 7 men gunned down in a Chicago garage, a gruesome Valentine signed with bullets. They called it the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And let me tell you something, I've researched every blood-soaked detail of that morning. Old-timers who heard the shots, cops who first walked into that slaughterhouse, even a fella who helped clean up the mess. They all say the same thing. There was something different about this killing. Something that went beyond ordinary murder, if there is such a thing. Death never sends an invitation, does it? Just shows up uninvited, wearing whatever costume suits its mood that day.
The bodies piled up, each one a grim reminder of the cost of doing business in my Chicago.
To challenge Capone was to invite a swift and brutal reckoning.
I brook no dissent, tolerate no competition.
Those who dared to stand up to him, to question his authority or encroach on his territory, met with fates far worse than a simple bullet to the head. There was Bugs Moran, a rival gangster who dared to defy Capone's dominance.
The St. Valentine's Day Massacre, a brazen attempt to wipe out Moran's entire gang, was a testament to my ruthlessness, my willingness to paint the city red to maintain my grip on power.
For those who witnessed firsthand the brutality of Capone's reign, the price of defiance was etched in their memories, a permanent scar on their collective psyche. To the public, he was a folk hero, the Robin Hood of Prohibition. To his rivals, he was a devil in pinstripes, as merciless as winter and twice as cold. Al Capone was the kind of man who didn't just play the game. He rigged it, broke it, and rewrote the rules in blood. Unique fact, Capone's business savvy extended beyond crime. He was instrumental in the development of expiration dates on milk bottles, a public health initiative that few would associate with a man of his reputation. Al Capone, the self-proclaimed businessman, the emperor of Chicago's underworld, had built his empire on a foundation of violence and corruption. But even the most meticulously crafted facade crumbles under the weight of its own contradictions. The very system he manipulated, the web of bribery and intimidation that shielded him from justice, would prove to be his undoing.
Elliot Ness, a young, incorruptible federal agent, arrived in Chicago with a small team of like-minded men, their mission to dismantle my empire brick by bloody brick. The Untouchables, as they were dubbed by a press eager for heroes in a city consumed by fear, targeted my illegal breweries, chipping away at the financial bedrock of my power. Taxes was my first mistake. The second mistake was not to have my men make the Untouchables disappear under 10 feet of concrete.
But it wasn't bullets or brute force that brought down Scarface. It was a bespectacled accountant, Frank Wilson, armed with ledgers and tax forms, who delivered the killing blow. Capone, for all his cunning and brutality, had overlooked a fundamental truth. Even empires built on blood money were subject to the IRS.
In 1931, the man who'd evaded justice for years, who'd walked free from countless trials, was convicted of tax evasion. I spent 11 years behind bars, my empire crumbling in my absence. The man who emerged from Alcatraz was a shadow of his former self. My mind ravaged by syphilis, my reign of terror nothing more than a cautionary tale whispered in the corridors of power.
The James brothers and Al Capone, two sets of outlaws forever linked in American folklore. We've built them into legends, romanticized their violence, and celebrated their defiance. Why? What captivates our collective imagination? Perhaps it's the allure of the anti-hero, the rebel who challenges the established order. In a world defined by rules, there's a thrill in witnessing those who dared to break free. Similarities. Both were charismatic leaders of notorious criminal organizations. Jesse James led the James Younger gang, specializing in bank and train robberies, while Al Capone dominated Chicago's organized crime during Prohibition. Both became folk legends during their lifetimes, and their deaths cemented their mythic status. Imagine a dark speakeasy, the air thick with cigar smoke and the soft hum of a jazz band in the background. In a shadowy corner, two legendary figures sit across from each other, Jesse James and Al Capone. The tension is palpable. Jesse James: "You think you're famous, Capone? You wouldn't last a day in the Wild West. We took what we wanted with grit and gunpowder, not backroom deals and bathtub gin." Al Capone: "Grit? You call robbing trains and banks grit? I ran an empire, James, controlled a whole city. You were just a bandit playing cowboy." Jesse James: "Empire, you were a parasite feeding off the weak. We were outlaws, yes, but we had honor. We fought against a system that wronged us." Al Capone: "Honor? Don't make me laugh. You were thieves, plain and simple. I built a business, created jobs. People feared me because I had power, not because I hid behind a mask. Jesse James, power? Your power was built on the misery of others. At least we faced our enemies head on. You hid behind henchmen and bribes. Al Capone. And look where it got you, James. Dead in your own home, betrayed by your own. At least I died a legend. The clash of these titans, real or imagined, underscores the essence of their legends. Two men, products of their time, forever debating their place in history. The echo of their gunfire still reverberates, a chilling allure of power and lawlessness. The names and methods may have changed, but the motivations, greed, ambition, power remain familiar. We see it in corporate boardrooms, in government halls, and in the dark corners of the internet. The Wild West may be gone, but human greed and ambition remain untamed. Jesse James, Al Capone, products of their time, cautionary tales. Their legacies warn us of the thin line between ambition and ruthlessness. True progress is built on empathy, compassion, and justice. We keep making them, these American monsters. Different names, different weapons, same dark heart beating beneath the American dream. They're still here, wearing suits and ties, quoting Shakespeare, smiling for the cameras. The only difference? The bullets are cheaper and the blood money's digital. Jesse James, Frank James, Al Capone, they weren't accidents. They weren't mistakes in the great American experiment. They were exactly what this country created, what it needed, what it still needs. The devil's dance goes on. The only question is, who's leading and who's following? If you like true crime history, subscribe, like, and share. Together, let's discover past criminals, facts, and secrets.